In this next module, we're going to talk about fetching data with React using the Fetch API and using the lifecycle hook useEffect. So first of all, we need to be able to have some type of lifecycle in our functional component. Traditionally, class components were the way in React that we could add lifecycle, but with more modern React, they give us this new hook called useEffect hook. So we want to leverage this hook so that when our component is loaded fully rendered, we would like to then use the Fetch API to fetch some external data. So therefore, we are using fetching data efficiently, as well as using React's component lifecycle via the useEffect hook. So the Fetch API is built into the browser. So the Fetch API is a modern promise-based interface for making HTTP requests and fetching resources from the web. That is from MDM Web Docs. The benefits of using Fetch is it's a very simple interface compared to the legacy way of fetching data through the XML HTTP request. So it's a more modern approach to fetching data. It has an automatic response coming back in the JSON format. So it's going to be a JSON object. And again, it's a promise-based API. So we can use promises with a thenable async await. The useEffect hook allows React to perform side effects and functional components, such as fetching data, subscribing to events. We can import useEffect from React. And then we can use the useEffect hook to trigger when our component is mounted and when it's unmounted. The key thing here to note is that it takes an array, a dependency array, that it can use because useEffect has multiple purposes. But for our purpose, we just want to use it to mount, to track the mounting and unmount. So we want to give that empty dependency array to useEffect so that it will behave in that way. So how do we fetch data and use the useEffect hook? First of all, we need to import the useEffect hook into our functional component. We need to wire it up. And in that useEffect hook, if we give it an empty dependency array, it'll call one time when the component is loaded. And that is where we would like to use our Fetch API to make an HTTP request and fetch our data from the server or external API. And then on the response, we can actually check the state of the response, whether there was an error or not, and then apply some error catching and let the user know that there has been a success or an error in our UI. How we would do this: try catch block to handle errors. If for some reason there was an exception that happened in our HTTP request using Fetch, we can now handle the error and display a nice message to the user so we have a nice UI experience instead of a broken page. We would also like to mention cross-origin resource sharing, or CORS. So this is a security mechanism that browsers have built within them. We are going to be bypassing this CORS error because we are building a front-end application and we are going to be triggering our web requests from our front end. We may run into this CORS error. Traditionally and ideally, these types of external web requests will be handled by our server. And then in later modules in our server, we can apply an NPM package to allow us to handle the CORS error properly. But for now, if we do run into this CORS error, I just want to give a developer tip. We can use a Google plugin to basically allow us to bypass that error so that we can work on our front end and we can toggle this extension to ignore the CORS security error to let us build out our front end, knowing that when we build the back end implementation, we are going to do it correctly and handle it in the server end. This is the extension that I use: allow CORS, access control, allow origin. I'm using this. I searched the Google Chrome web store extensions for it, and I can add it to Chrome. When you do add it, you may have to pin it. You can see you can pin it if you would like, and then you have access to this extension. You toggle it on, and it'll allow you to bypass that error if you do run into it. And then you can toggle it off. A dev note though, just remember that if you're toggling it off for your local host, just remember to turn it off when you're done your development, because it may cause some unnecessary side effects if you forget to leave it on when browsing things like Google Documents. So just remember to keep it off, but it is very helpful for building out our front-end application in the next programming module.